Following is a special presentation of the Buccaneers Sports Network. This is the Jay and Keith Show. Two broadcasters, two microphones, and one meticulously scripted podcast.
You what?
Just kidding. Get it, J.K.? You get it.
That's what I thought was so funny. It's not funny.
Alongside Keith Brake, here's the voice of the Bucs, Jay Sandos.
All right, it is Wednesday on Jay and Keith, and we're going to be talking a lot of football. We're also going to be talking.
Say what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Say what?
I was going to make something more elaborate. I was going to make a more elaborate open for Say What, but you just seem to have so much fun with that. I think I'm going to leave it as is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Say what?
Yeah, I didn't say anything. Sorry.
Say what?
Okay. All right, so we're going to do Say What, and I promise I won't be hitting the bumper as much. Well, no, I'm not. I'm probably going to hit the bumper. I don't know what I'm lying.
You will be hitting the bumper.
Yes, we're going to be hitting the bumper. We're going to be talking Say What, a little fun segment we'll be doing there. But first up, right, different type of fun segment.
Yes, we're going to talk about conference realignment. And, Jay, we're going to talk about our fan base's favorite team. You know what that is? Fan bases. And they just everybody in Buccaneer Nation just loves this team. They love them so much. You know what I'm talking about?
Is it a team? It's not the C word. Otherwise, you would have led differently. With
No,
that.
probably
So
not. No, it's not.
I'm going to go with a possible team that could be moving leagues that broke a couple days ago.
Yeah. Kennesaw State.
The Owls.
The Owls of Kennesaw State. A team for whom most Buck fans have no love lost. Reports have been coming out that the Owls are preparing to join, pending some legal maneuvers, legislative maneuvering that has to happen in Georgia for teams to reclassify. They are getting ready to join Conference USA.
I got a lot of questions about that. I know we're going to have a guest.
First of all, how dare you? No, I'm kidding.
I've seen the facilities.
Uh-huh.
Not great. Now, the soccer stadium they converted to football. They've done what they could, and that's not bad.
Yeah, I mean, for an
arena's
FCS stadium, it's really high quality. It's really well done. It's going to take some work to expand that to an FBS stadium, but most stadiums are built these days to be expanded at some point.
Unless you're Charlotte. Which was the only thing we learned from Charlotte was, hey, we did this wrong. So the visit to Charlotte was at least fruitful in the fact that we were able to change, plans and how we built so that, as Keith said, you could build onto it later.
Right.
The suites they did were terrible. There was a lot of things Charlotte just was open about. Like, look, hey, we didn't know. We got somebody to come build, and they were enthralled with all this brick and this and that. And then really what we've discovered is we're kind of locked into this, and it's going to cost a lot of money if we ever want to expand and or try to upgrade any of the amenities, boxes, suites, stuff like that. So that being said, Kennesaw State does have the ability to do that.
Yes.
Baseball has been a little bit of bread and butter for them.
It has been pretty good, yeah.
I mean, you're right there in, right outside Cobb County, and you can get all the Atlanta, or metro area Atlanta kids. Mm-hmm. They've had plenty of first-round draft picks in baseball, so it's been a solid program. Softball's not bad.
And their men's basketball team has never been above 500 in Division I?
It's been brutal, and the arena is awful. So
yeah,
I'm very shocked. I know a lot of teams, a lot of leagues, not teams, a lot of leagues are so enamored with the Atlanta market. But let me tell you, as a team in ETSU that was there, the Atlanta market has zero idea about Kennesaw State. Yeah. It is not making the AJC top 7 sports page.
The only reason that you would build for markets is to make it easier for your coaches to recruit markets. And I think that is a valid course of action. If you're a mid-major, it's like, we want to add a program that is inside the Charlotte Metro so that it makes our coaches' lives easier when they go recruit the Charlotte Metro. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. But so many people get enamored with TV deals and brand presence and all this stuff, and none of it amounts to anything ever. This Conference USA has already been through that once, and they failed. They tried to build based on markets, based on, what would get the most television eyeballs for them, thinking that would be the big TV deal. And the Sun Belt got the last laugh because the Sun Belt got the teams in small towns that everybody actually wants to watch.
So my biggest argument when they would say that, and they say, well, we're in Nashville, we're in Jacksonville, well, there's no media coverage. Mm-hmm. And then I would venture to say if you went and checked the roster of most of the teams, unless you've got some kids that stayed local with that team,
probably not getting kids out of those markets.
I very rarely – for ETSU to get somebody from Tennessee, okay, fine, and you can get them from Nashville area, it's in-state, yes, I could see that. Not a lot of Jacksonville kids came to ETSU. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of Atlanta kids came to ETSU.
Right.
Not a lot of Fort Myers, Tampa, St. Pete. We
right.
had a couple Tampas, but that's 2 hours north. So I don't really think that was what they were intending to do.
Who were the Tampa kids? Was Isaiah Brown, was he from Tampa?
He was Miami.
Salazzo was Tampa.
James Anthony was Tampa as well.
Yeah.
So there was a couple that came through there. But in reality, they're just, Sheldon Cooley was around there. It's just a lot that it didn't bring in. Again, that's 2 hours north. That's not necessarily the bogus. So I just.
But I will say, part to my point, it's easier to recruit those places when you have road trips there, and instead of having to fly completely independent of the team, you're already flying down there. You take a rental car, you go 2 hours north to watch a kid play. It's different from having to book that trip separately or hope they come through with a travel team and all those other things. So there is some validity to that, but if you're not getting media coverage, then you don't need to build based on media markets. You build based on the best teams that you can get in your league. And CUSA kind of did that with Sam Houston, right? And Jacksonville State. Those teams, facilities-wise, I don't know that they were ready either, but they were teams that had something they could bank on in terms of success, in terms of fan support. Kennesaw has had some success on the football field, but it's not necessarily translated into a big brand. Whereas Jacksonville State, I think people are a little more familiar with the Gamecocks. People are certainly familiar with Sam Houston after their spring national title run and everything that went into that. So there was some cachet there that maybe wasn't even there, 10 years ago with those schools, while Jacksonville State was beating down the door trying to get into the Sun Belt and didn't get in. Eastern Kentucky tried to do the same thing. They still can't go FBS. So because they can't get an invite. So I don't know. It's an inscrutable inner machination. I'm not crazy about it, but I do know somebody who knows those inner machinations very well. Good friend of mine in Chicago. Matt Brown is the publisher of Extra Points, and I got the chance to catch up with Matt earlier today. Matt, it's so good to talk with you. I got the chance to get to know you over the course of your time or my time in Fargo and your time initially at SB Nation, Banner Society, and now with this venture, Extra Points, that you've done. This is year, I think, 3 or 4 of this project. How is the newsletter business treating you as this thing continues to grow into a really valued piece of the college media space?
Yeah, we're doing this now for about 2.5 years. We're coming up on the year mark as being a part of the D1 Ticker family. Mm-hmm. It's been a real blessing because I know that digital media is a really tough space. I know people's budgets are tighter and not everybody has the money to be able to support another subscription. But it's grown, far stronger and far faster than I anticipated, right? It gives me a decent living. And we're really excited about the classroom offering component to this. I think one of the most gratifying parts of Extra Points has been that this is now used as a textbook for a lot of sports management and sports business and people studying college athletics. And we think that has room to grow in a lot of different ways. So this is something that doesn't just help the media folks. It doesn't just help administrators or degenerate nerds, but hopefully other people that are looking at getting into this world can benefit from what we're building here.
No doubt. And in you, I have found a kindred spirit as a realignment degenerate. It's the shock and horror of what's happening to college athletics being processed through spreadsheets and just trying to stay on top of it as much as you can, consume as much information about it as you can. We've talked at length, you and I have, about Conference USA in the past, and now Kennesaw State appears to be on track to join that conference that Liberty seems to have saved from the brink of oblivion. I know there was a meeting of the University of Georgia System Board of Regents this morning to discuss that. What can you tell us about where Kennesaw State is in the process and how CUSA came to select a team from the Georgia suburbs? Or Atlanta suburbs?
Sure. So I can address the latter part there first. Might be a little bit easier, right? One of the struggles with Conference USA right now is that it doesn't have a clearly defined geographic center or footprint, right? It extends from Virginia to South Florida, down to West Texas. And what bringing Kennesaw brings, even independent of their athletic department, is you get something that's close to the midpoint. It's close to a gigantic, airport hub, so it's easy to get to. It might make division structures a little bit easier, and it's an important market that you want to be in for football, right? Like the Georgia suburb, the Atlanta suburbs are a critical place to get football talent, to go get basketball talent, and also as you're approaching conversations with media partners, it's a metro that you'd like to have a presence in, given that a lot of Conference USA schools right now are not in major metropolitan areas. There's some sponsorship component. You add that to the fact that Kennesaw is unique among current FCS institutions, and that's huge. It's got over 40,000 students, the second largest university in the state, and it's in an area that's growing really quickly. And honestly, being in the suburbs might have an advantage because there's already 2 FBS institutions downtown, but there's hundreds of thousands of people that live outside the outer belt that may want an FBS college football entertainment option. So you have that, and they've been good, which is also something that's unusual for some of these teams that are reclassifying. I know Kennesaw's struggling a little bit this year, but despite being a pretty young program, you have a new stadium, and they've made the playoffs 4 times and won a game every time. They've won 3 conference titles. They've been above 500 just about every year. You factor all of those things together, you could definitely see why this would be a very attractive component, a very attractive institution for what Conference USA is trying to become.
I just think about 10 years ago, Conference USA went after the Houston market, they went after the Miami market, they went after markets, and it didn't work. And the Sun Belt went for legacy programs, App State, Georgia Southern, Coastal Carolina, which is Myrtle Beach-ish, programs that were good, had success. Conway, those programs took off at this level, and now the Sun Belt is more valuable as a TV property because they have games that get people talking. I hear stuff like Western Kentucky doesn't want to be in a conference with EKU. Stephen F. Austin isn't ready to move up and join Sam Houston. And it almost feels like CUSA maybe hasn't learned its lesson from the last time around.
I would agree with you if Kennesaw sucked. Right. If you were just adding an urban school for the sake of adding an urban school, and that was part of the problem, I would say, that's an issue. And you could point to the fact that, hey, this is a stadium that's definitely going to need some significant upgrades to it. It's new, but it's under 9,000 capacity, and it's going to have to probably more than double that to be FBS grade. It's a school that's, quite frankly, really bad at basketball, which is something that's been a priority for Conference USA. But they have the on-the-field success, and I think it's easier to draw a through line to where Kennesaw becomes something different than what it is right now than it might be for some of these other FCS programs, right? We know that this wasn't the first choice because Conference USA added a bunch of other schools from CUSA, from the FCS first, right? They went after Sam Houston. They went after Jacksonville State. I don't look at their expansion strategy, especially knowing the other schools that they've talked to, as urban-centric.
Matt Brown of Extra Points is our guest on the Jay and Keith Show. And Matt, if we talk about that process and what Kennesaw means to CUSA, getting to 10 was something that we all kind of thought would be a priority for them, that they would find a team somewhere to be at 10th. But I mentioned EKU and the friction with WKU. Stephen F. Austin's name has come up. Tarleton State has been a name that's come up a lot. Do you get the sense from people you've talked to that CUSA is already thinking about going beyond 10, or do they want to sit tight for a little while and see how the D1 Constitution process we've been talking about for over a year plays out?
Yeah. I think that based on what I have heard, there's no reason to be at 10 versus 12 unless you just want to wait and see what develops to get from there, right? I think if there were 3 other Kennesaw States, schools that had, $28-30 million athletic budgets and robust growing enrollment and had some record of success, I think Conference USA would already work to get that done. Mm-hmm. But that's not what this field is. And you have several FCS programs that have expressed interest, but like you said, there are concerns. And to be fair about Eastern, and this was a finalist for a Sun Belt spot not that long ago. Right. The other concern that I've heard people within this conference raise is, boy, that football stadium is going to need a lot of work, like maybe tear it down. Or there's some facility components on the stadium side that just aren't ready. Stephen F. Austin doesn't have a student fee. Their athletic budget is not where they'd like it to be yet, and this was not the initial timetable they thought about reclassifying. And the money, to Western Kentucky president's point, you raised this earlier, is we're looking for stability, and it's one thing to have the potential. It's one thing to say that you want to ramp up to an FBS caliber budget or FBS caliber facilities. It's another thing to have it. So could they move to 12 by the end of this year? Yeah, I think it's possible. They've definitely taken multiple meetings with some of these places. I think it is more likely that they wait a little bit and see who actually put shovels in the ground. What does the transformation committee look like? And how prepared are some of these FCS places to have $30 million athletic budgets in the near future? It's not like if you don't take Tarleton now that you're not going to be able to get Tarleton in 2 years.
Right. Very true. And Tarleton is a team that's in the process of still transitioning up from Division II, already talking about wanting to go to FBS. So they've got a little bit of time where they can stew and like you said, ramp up to where they ultimately want to be. How stable is the ASUN right now? Because a lot of these schools joined with the idea that this would either be a proving ground for FBS, that maybe the conference would eventually go to FBS in some form or fashion, or at the very least that they were forming a high-end FCS league with other schools. And now Jacksonville State's gone and Kennesaw State's gone, and Eastern Kentucky burned a lot of bridges in the OVC to do this. Austin Peay, North Alabama, those other schools. How stable do we think the ASUN is as its football championship aspirations now kind of hinge on the WAC having enough teams to house the remaining schools in the ASUN sponsoring football?
Yeah, and that's a challenge too, because quite frankly, I think the WAC itself is facing some potential instability from multiple fronts. Not just from the Southlands continuing to be in the ear of some of these Texas schools, potentially the ASUN trying to move some of the Texas schools into their banner, but also there are schools that don't sponsor football in the WAC that could potentially move elsewhere. It's not crazy that Grand Canyon could join the West Coast Conference that is having conversations about replacing BYU, or that Seattle might move in that direction, or somebody else. And if you lose, I think, one of these core basketball institutions, that might be what causes a domino effect. The struggle for both the ASUN and the WAC, I think, is that there's not really an out-of-the-box opportunity to add other schools at the level that you want to replace people that might leave, right? The Division II schools within the ASUN's footprint that sponsor football have mostly indicated they're not interested. There's a few that don't sponsor football that could be and have had some conversations, and it's the same situation for the WAC. So as of right this second, if Kennesaw does in fact leave and make that process official at the end of this week or early next week, that you still have enough FCS teams to run the WAC ASUN Challenge, but you really can't if you lose anybody else. And there are a lot of forces that could push those dominoes over.
Matt, as I obviously here in SoCon country, we have some new neighbors. The CAA moved in a few years back with picking up Elon. No one in the league was really sad to see them go. But now North Carolina A&T and Campbell are committed to join the CAA in football in the near future. It's like, okay, haha, very funny. We got some new neighbors down here. Why has the CAA been so aggressive in its expansion especially thinking about the basketball side where that league takes a lot of pride in being good, there's only one automatic bid to go around for that, 14, 16 schools.
Sure. But you also have to do whatever it takes to keep everybody else happy, right? Mm-hmm. I think I've written about this before, that It's not exactly a state secret that last year and before then, a lot of Colonial athletic schools were taking meetings and kind of letting people know that they could be persuaded to join somewhere else. There may only be one auto bid, but Colonial basketball now is not what it was 15 years ago.
Right.
It's not a premier elite mid-major league. It's not a bad one, but it's not in a position to compete for auto bids. So if you need to expand and maybe expand very aggressively to allow you to do divisional play, to allow you to do some pod travel because you already have a pretty expansive footprint and keep everybody together for football, that might be worth it, even if that maybe dilutes what the basketball share looks like. Mm-hmm. That may be a defensible risk too, because there's also no guarantee that college basketball revenue distribution, the automatic bid system, the way that revenue is shared, will remain the same post-transformation committee or post in the next couple of years. So if moving into the South makes things easier to keep your Southern wing, if that it increases the stability of your football product, completely understand why they did it.
And I say that to kind of lead into the proposals or the chatter that college sports postseasons might be about to expand. I know you just talked to some college baseball people on Extra Points for a story on this, but the suggestion that we could be seeing up to 25% of the Division I level in given postseasons seems like a pretty aggressive ramp up. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips said it's a Rubik's Cube times 2, but it is doable logistically. What are you hearing about that, and how do you think that could affect certain conference realignment decisions where maybe suddenly mid-major leagues have a lot more access to at-large bids because there are way more at-large bids to go around?
Yeah, the second question there, I mean, the devil there really is in the details.
Sure.
So I can share that over the summer and even, coming into the winter, coming out of the NCAA convention, I think you and I have even talked about it. There was a lot of chatter among ADs that there could be big changes coming to the tournament. Mm-hmm. Not just potential expansion, but also potential alteration of the automatic bid system to where maybe the auto bid low major teams have to play against each other before they get into the tournament, or maybe the power conferences consolidate more of that power and more of that access because it's about money. I think that the general tenor of those conversations has shifted, I think in part because of pushback over the past couple of months. I think it is more likely than not that every league will still have some automatic access to the tournament, but I would expect some kind of basketball expansion. 72 is probably more likely than something like 80 or 90, but to think about it this way, we moved to the 64-team system. We've tweaked it a couple of times since then in like the early 80s. Mm-hmm. And we've added 50-plus teams to Division I since then, and the access hasn't gone up proportionally, whether in terms of automatic bids or auto bids. So I can understand why you'd at least think about this. Where you may see some bigger changes, honestly, maybe in some of these other sports. And I was surprised from talking to not just Power 5 commissioners, but ADs and some coaches about the interest level in really re-examining how almost all of these tournaments are run, to the point where you might see some real expansion. I think that's possible for baseball, softball, volleyball, less so for lacrosse or hockey because you're kind of already at that 25% threshold, right. But also how you pick those teams. A lot of sports still use the RPI, and nobody likes it. Mm-hmm. Not everybody does the full seeding system like we do for college basketball. Maybe that makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. There's very few things in general in college sports, from money to what it means to be a Division I school to realignment to any of these things that I think are sacred cows that can't be re-examined and retouched. And how we do the postseason is just one of those things.
Yeah, I know college hockey uses the pairwise system, which it seemed to me that the selection committee was pretty cut and dried. Like, if you're, not an AQ and you're in the top whatever in the pairwise, we're going to put you in as an at-large. And that seemed like a pretty straightforward system. Everybody knows what they need to do in a given moment to get into the postseason. You talked to Wofford baseball head coach Todd Interdonato about expanding the baseball postseason. Well, what did he have to say? What was the takeaway for you from that conversation? Because I do think an expanded college baseball postseason would benefit at least one team in the Southern Conference in a given year. It's a pretty strong baseball league.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And part of the reason I wanted to talk to Todd was because Wofford's been just outside of the postseason for 2 years in a row, like perennially successful team, and breaks didn't go the right way. I've reached out to people at similar programs. I tried to talk to NC State. I tried to talk to people at the Big West. I talked to a bunch of other administrators, some on the record, some not, in that story. What Todd told me was like, look, when you talk to an AD, you talk to anybody in college sports, talk to a commissioner, what's important to you as we run this enterprise, they usually say the student experience, the athlete experience, right? When you talk to athletes about what were some of the most memorable, important experiences you had as a college athlete, you often hear about postseason experiences. So, in the SoCon, right, like everybody makes the baseball tournament. So even if your team stinks, you get to have some kind of postseason experience. But participating in the baseball national tournament is a different thing. So, what Todd's saying, and this is even at that self-interested, I've heard this from people that wouldn't be, what's the harm in expanding that access to let more athletes have that kind of experience? Even if the experience ends up being a little bit different, if Division I has grown, if we can do this in a way that doesn't hurt class time or preparation, then that sounds like something that we should do. Yeah. There's the other thing, though, and this came up a lot in baseball, and it's come up in volleyball too, is beyond just expanding the tournament, we got to talk about how we pick who gets to be in the tournament. We got to talk about that RPI. We got to talk about other metrics. We got to talk about seeding, because I don't think a lot of mid-major people want, hey, let's go add on an extra 16 teams, and they're all going to be in the SEC or the ACC,
Absolutely. I don't think anybody wants that, but unfortunately it looks like the SEC, ACC, Big Ten, some of these leagues could be expanding by 16 teams by the time we get to expanded postseasons.
Yeah.
Before we let you go, any read on the Pac-12 and what that's going to look like? Are Oregon and Washington in it for the long haul? How large does the Big Ten loom and their potential moves over the future of that conference out west?
It is a complete 100% linchpin for any realignment happening right now at the Power 5 level. The Pac-12 can't get any media deal done without their institution signing some kind of GOR agreement, grant of rights agreement, likely for the next 6 to 8 years. And nobody, no matter how good that deal is, and we have an idea about how good it's going to be, Oregon or Washington is going to sign that if they think there is a legitimate chance that they could get a Big Ten invitation in the near future. I know those schools have had talks with people in the Big Ten through television consultants and through their attorneys. And I know that, based on the best information I've been told, there's not a consensus among Big Ten leaders about whether you should go to 20, whether you should go to 20 only under certain financial benchmarks, or whether you should wait for a little bit, even if you make a little bit less money by waiting, because you preserve political peace and you get more time to onboard and implement USC and UCLA. I would imagine there's going to be some kind of resolution before the end of football season, because the Pac-12 can't go into 2023 without any kind of television deal. And that will be the signal of how serious any of this stuff is and which factions within the Big Ten are successful. But the Big 12 and the Pac-10 and everybody else can't really do anything until they figured out what the Big Ten's going to do.
Matt Brown is the publisher of Extra Points. You can find it online, extrapointsmb.com. Terrific newsletter, which does a lot of inside stuff with the business of college sports. If you're looking for realignment, name, image, and likeness, those sorts of things, Matt is a fantastic resource for the entire college sports community, and so pleased to have him on the show with us today. Matt, thanks for giving us some time. Really appreciate you, and we'll talk again soon.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, great stuff with Matt there. Just a brilliant conversationalist, first of all. Great writer and somebody that is really plugged into the realignment sphere. So when we talked about it kind of on the front end, Kennesaw State obviously laid out the reasons there. Kennesaw State's had some level of success in FCS. They are not necessarily the first team that CUSA wanted out of FCS to call them up, but that's a team that's been okay. It's justified. It's justifiable on their end, as opposed to getting a team that's just not won any games at all at this level. You go out and get teams that are 4-7 every year. That's a little bit different than Kennesaw. That's won playoff games. Not a lot of playoff games, but some playoff games.
I mean, this is just not your dad's Conference USA, and I know it all started sort of when the Big East kind of went out, and there was a bunch of other leagues that were trying to form a league, and Conference USA was one of those leagues where you're like, oh, look at these teams. Let's see who they got. kind of that other, when they talk about the six, and then, then the American Conference came about, then some realignment, then you started to see the Power Fives really start gobbling up and getting more teams, whether it was from other Power Fives or bringing people up to Power Fives, and then the seismic shift, and then Conference USA, which everyone kind of had the pipe dream to get in on. I mean, Appalachian State was pretty open about it at one point. That was the league. They were trying to get in.
And now it's completely flipped.
Yeah, now everyone would rather be in the Sun Belt, the traditional college town teams where you're not, going from, what was that, from Boone to Louisiana, North Texas, some of those schools they were going to. So it's a little more back to being regionalized. But, I mean, you're looking at Texas San Antonio, Florida National, Charlotte, UAB, Western Kentucky, Middle Tennessee, Louisiana, Ruston, Louisiana. That's what I couldn't think of.
Yep.
North Texas, Rice.
Which is leaving.
Florida Atlantic.
And they're leaving.
So, all of those, just they're hemorrhaging. They're having to reach.
The conference nearly came apart, and they kind of made the I call it almost a deal with the devil with Liberty, right? Because not that long ago, Liberty offered to write a $20 million check to get into the conference, and the conference told them no thanks. And now CUSA's tune has changed now that the conference is on the brink of collapse, and that requires taking the best teams that you can find. And I certainly think that, of teams that see themselves as FBS institutions, that's something that Kennesaw has aspired to for over a decade. The school is huge. You don't have to charge a huge athletic fee to get a lot of money out of the student body to help support it. So it's an interesting move. I don't know that it's going to work for Kennesaw from a competitive standpoint. But I understand why Conference USA did it. I understand why Kennesaw did it. And unfortunately, it's one less good non-conference opponent in this part of the country for SoCon schools. But that's kind of what I look at here. The ASUN has Eastern Kentucky, North Alabama, Austin Peay, teams that joined specifically for football. Some of those teams burned some bridges to join the ASUN thinking it was going to be a thing, and now that football championship is DOA. It's done. So where did they go next?
So the biggest conversation for that was Liberty, because Liberty had been turned down by everybody. They sold.
Yeah.
From people I talked to, they sold everybody like, hey, you come to this ASUN league, and all the ones that wanted to make the jump up, Central Arkansas, Jacksonville State, Eastern Kentucky, all the teams that were openly trying to get FBS. Mm-hmm. And, hey, we're in a couple years when we get established, we're going to fund the FBS conference. We're going to eat the $20 million, everybody kick in, but we'll fund most of it to get us all there.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden Liberty left ship. And this is why when people kept asking me about Chattanooga, and they offered Chattanooga 3 different times. Chattanooga, a couple of people called down here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk nice about Chattanooga because, honestly, this is where you could work together. And they said, well, what's the issue? And I said, you tell me one thing the ASUN has started. And I like Ted Gumbart and John Baptist and John Roberts, everybody else that's down there working well. Matt Wilson, who's there for years. Good working relationship. I've done side work for them. I'm not spewing any hate on them, but they were ultimately no stability for 25 years.
It was a very transient league, yes.
So there was no way that you could sell Chattanooga, hey, you go there. And Chat was upset with the SoCon on a few other things, and it's simmered down, but they were upset enough that they were openly kind of looking. Conference USA had kind of floated some ideas amongst other teams, and then really the ASUN. And they asked, and we were like, hey, you need to wait 3 to 5 years to see if this thing's going to go, and it didn't even take that.
Yeah.
And so that's really where Liberty's money, fool's gold, everybody went to go jump on in, and then other teams have been able to find a landing spot from there. Some have not. Some are going to be in purgatory. Some, again, I think the Southern Conference has been staunch, and I am going to, take a shot here at our own league, but they have been staunch on we only want 9 teams. We want the balanced 8-game schedule. Well, you keep doing that, and a couple teams go, you're going to be in the boat with the Big South and everybody else. Where are you going to go when everybody else goes? The other thing is basketball-wise, I think you can make an argument to bring in a few more teams basketball. You can bring in a few teams football. The reason why some of these leagues get multi-teams in that have more than 9 teams is because some of their records are gaudy and they don't play each other. Mm-hmm. And there's not a conference championship game. So my argument was, well, if you brought in 3 or 4 teams and, you got 5 teams with only 1 or 2 losses and they got 9, wins, it's going to be tough to look at all those teams. You could get more teams in the playoffs.
Look at the Missouri Valley Football Conference. They added Murray State. Murray State's not going to win that conference. Murray State might not finish 500 in that conference in the next decade, but they're in the Missouri Valley Football Conference, and that's going to be charted as a win in the Missouri Valley Football Conference for Southern Illinois or Indiana State or Youngstown State or whatever team that is right around the cut line that needs to go 5-3 in the league to get in. That's going to get him in. So I'm with you. I would love to see the Southern Conference be aggressive and pursue opportunities, because the leagues that probably were the biggest threat to your position in the Southeast are coming apart. So now is the chance to take the good pieces of what's left of that boat that is on fire in the harbor and stitch them onto your own and make your own boat stronger.
I mean, Campbell going to CAA just adds another one. There's like 14 teams now in the CAA.
Campbell and North Carolina A&T both going, yeah. And that's just a matter of, I think there were some schools in the CAA. There were rumblings about William and Mary joining the Patriot League at one point, and they were very complimentary and certainly didn't rule it out. I think a lot of those Southern ads were to keep some of those other Southern schools happy. College of Charleston and Elon, Bill and Mary, Richmond.
That's because the only conversation the Southern Conference had did involve William and Mary, Elon, Richmond, and College of Charleston. Richmond was going to be sort of the de facto football for College of Charleston. College of Charleston would play all the other sports, so they would work as a team, if you will. And then Elon, because North Carolina Greensboro was complaining about travel partners and lack of this, and they flirted with the CAA, so the Southern Conference went up and said, well, we'll take the closest teams you got and dare you to go when we get the 3 closest teams basically in basketball to stay near stay near where they are. And then you're talking about 12-team basketball league, 13, depending on what's going on. But that was some serious flirtation. But then when everything calmed down, I think the Southern Conference kind of backed off because Greensboro – it was more, I think, Southern Conference answering Greensboro's threat than really them wanting to because they were talking about using some of the exit fees that they had saved up, even from Davidson, and just they've got that in the pot that they were talking about, help waiving some fees. Basically, hey, we won't, if you do your buyout, then we won't make you pay an entrance fee, but you would have to pay an exit fee on the way out to even try to, entice those teams to go. And, again, I don't know why you wouldn't look that way, because if you're College of Charleston, and I know folks that work there, they're like, there is no sense in us having to fly to Boston and New York and Philly and can't afford hotel rooms for all the soccers and the volleyballs and all the sports that people don't think about. Basketball's got money. Basketball's going to be able to do it. All these other sports, it is ridiculous. Tennis, golf, hotel rooms for those teams, they are hemorrhaging money left and right. So College of Charleston desperately went out, but CAA, give them credit, right? They went out, they got more teams. Campbell now is going to be a closer team for them.
Yep.
There's just A&T is going to be closer. All of that.
They're going to be able to make a trip to Greensboro with A&T, yeah.
And then what do you do if you're the Big South? I mean, you've tried to bring in different people to keep you afloat. Now you're going to lose Campbell, North Carolina A&T. You only have 4 football teams left.
You're already talking about an alliance with the OVC. The OVC has enough that they can kind of leverage that situation to their benefit, where those Big South schools are just OVC football affiliates.
Well, and
if they want to. I'm not sure they want to, but if they want to, they could.
And I'll be curious to see how the ASUN shakes out here in a little bit as well.
I would be inclined to agree. And I think there are several schools that would be very good additions to leagues around the region in those conferences. So it's a fascinating world. I don't expect anything from the Southern Conference because I think a lot of schools in the league are content with what they have. And what they have is not bad, but also, if opportunity knocks, would love to see what that looks like.
Yeah, other than we heard Chad a while ago flirt, and I think that's gone away. we know UNCG was very upset, but now Wes Miller isn't there, and that was a big pushing point for that. Wes Miller wanted to be in a high-profile basketball league.
And the CAA's one bid, and now it's super cluttered, and I don't know that I would do that now.
Well, the big thing for UNCG is they're the only basketball school, and they feel like they are the stepchild, and they get treated bad.
I can understand that perspective, but also I think that ship has kind of sailed. And UNCG, as much as there's no love lost with them, but they are additive to this conference. Like, they are good for this conference, and as we're in a public school. Like, we want to have more public schools in the SoCon. They are a very, very valued member of this group, even if they are the one school that doesn't play football. I don't know. I think there's a lot of merit to having that school in the league, and I think it's probably better for them that they don't play football, because then everybody would get mad about having 9 games instead of 8.
Yeah, there's always that private school, public school fight that they've always been having in the
maintain
Southern
the
Conference.
balance.
They kind of pull and they go and they want to get perfect 5-5. But the football blows my mind. They refuse. They're like, we got 8. Everybody plays everybody. It's round robin. It's true champion. We still have ties, still have everything else. Everybody can beat everybody.
You could also go to 9 games like the Southland used to do if you brought in another team. And then you just don't have to worry about scheduling you can schedule the bye game with an FBS opponent, and then you schedule a decent non-conference opponent.
If you're good enough. If not, and if you're not going to be very good that year, schedule a win. Who cares?
Yeah, and you end up getting an extra data point where maybe you don't have to worry about what does a non-counter do to our postseason resume. It could change a lot. I think it would be useful, but I understand people's perspective in not wanting to explore it. Let's do Say What. You want to do Say What?
Say what?
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. So Say What, I play quotes, or read quotes in some cases, and Jay reacts to those quotes. Let's start with a quote from our very own Buccaneer Sports Network broadcast, shall we?
By the way, folks, I just got to let you guys know the junior Hilltoppers, led by running back Rhett Sanders. Sanders.
Holy cow.
Sandos.
Who? Wow. You are
Rhett
fired.
Sanders.
You are fired.
That's Deion Sanders. No, Rhett Sandos, who scored 3 times in a 20-14 win. The last one I saw on video there went about 80 yards, stiff-armed the guy about the 40 and took it to the house. So congratulations. They're undefeated. They'll be expected big winners in the playoffs. But, again, the Sandos, Rhett Sandos, 3 touchdowns today in a 20-14 win over the junior Vikings at Tennessee High.
Yeah. Rhett Sanders.
Would you like to know my reaction to that?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Wow. Mark was so excited, and
he was stoked.
He really wanted to do it, and I was like, hey, man, I appreciate saying something about my kid, but, he said, no, we get a spot. I think I got to do it. I was like, all right. So there was a lull, and he kind of elbowed me. He's like, yeah, I'm going to go. And then the first word out of his mouth is Sanders.
Yeah.
So are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The only thing worse if you'd have given me a Santos. I guess that would be the only thing worse. At least we had Randy Sanders. We got Dick Sander. We got Jay Sanders. Like, I can see how you forget the OS and go with the ers.
We even call you Sander Claus sometimes, especially around the holidays.
That throws people off, too. But the fact we had a Richard Sander, a Randy Sanders, and a Jay Sandos always threw people off because they would throw different variations of that. So he got the D instead of the T, because at least I have a D in my name and not a T. But, yes, that was I tried to fire him, but then I realized he really couldn't go anywhere because he was in the booth.
He couldn't go anywhere.
And I was blocking the door because he had to get by me to go. So, and he's bigger than me, to be honest with you.
He is. He is a lot larger than you are.
Yeah.
He is,
Yeah, and I don't take a punch very well, so I'm good.
No, neither do I. All right. Speaking of guys with better senses of humor and better photogenics than us, how about our next quote on Say What?
I think the quarter zip, it's just, it's got to be a good fit. Can't be too tight. It's also the number one gift that Peyton and I give to each other is a quarter zip. So we don't only believe in it, but especially if I see an orange one, it's Tennessee orange, it's Bronco orange. It's like, I gotta get it to him. I know I owe him a thank you gift for something. So I just kind of, collect them and then send them when necessary.
It's Eli Manning on Kevin Clark's Slow News Day podcast talking about quarter zips and giving Peyton Manning quarter zips.
Do we think Peyton Manning can afford quarter zips?
No, but
Are they both in love with
it's
quarter
obviously
zips?
a bit. I mean, I love
It has
quarter
to be
zips.
it's got to a
Quarter
joke.
zips are
It's
awesome.
got to be a joke at some point, right?
There's got to
rib?
be
Is
a
he
little
ribbing
bit
them?
of a running gag there, for
Yeah.
sure. But I love me some quarter zips, man. I think they're great. They're awesome. What do you have something against quarter zips?
I don't think. Do I have quarter? I probably do.
I have
I've
quarter
like
yeah.
free ETSU quarter zips. I'm not real sure I've ever bought a quarter zip on my own.
When I was in North Dakota, probably 70% of my upper body wardrobe was quarter zips.
I'm actually wondering if I've ever paid attention to anything I bought if it was a quarter zip. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I have. I don't know them that fashionable.
I mean, technically, this vest that I'm wearing right now is a quarter zip as well. It's a quarter zip vest, and you can.
The amount.
Oh, can't even.
You can't even hear that, can you? Well, he's doing. Is that his? Okay. All right. Well, that escalated again. I think 97% of my wardrobe is stuff I've accumulated for free, rather that is
Absolutely 100%.
work related, or I play a lot of golf tournaments and there's a lot of tea gifts and stuff.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Or if I win any, tournament things and you get pro shop bucks or something, I go buy the free gear. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I don't know that I have bought a quarter zip. Now I won't say my wife or somebody hasn't gifted me any, but
Yeah.
I don't know that I have. I don't know. But that sounds like Eli just somehow having a gag with Peyton.
I believe that's exactly what it is, and they probably have stuff that's like hidden in the quarter zips. It's like there's some sort of code element or something like that. But it's a really easy garment to wear. You don't have to mess with buttons. You don't have to worry about tucking it in. You just throw it on, zip it up most of the way, and you're good to go.
Okay, there's a lot.
There's a lot of judgment in that face right now,
a lot-
Sandos.
lot
I don't
to-
like where this
to
is going.
unpack here for
All
Keith
right.
and his quarter zip.
Speaking of judgment, how about we all judge a Major League Baseball pitcher?
I'm not going to make any excuses. I took the ball today and put us in a big hole right away, right off the bat. They came out swinging and had a really good approach. And frankly, I just didn't do my job today. The guys were counting on me to go out there and have a good start and keep it a close game, and I just let it get out of the way too quick.
All right, so that's Braves, right?
That's Max Fried
Yep.
after a really, really rocky outing in Game 1 against Philadelphia. His shortest outing of the year, where he went 3 1/3, 8 runs, 6 hits, or rather 8 hits, 6 runs, 4 earned, a walk, 2 Ks.
Have we checked on Matt Wilgem and Robert Harper, the Braves fans that always seem to send me gifts about how bad the Cubs? The Cubs have been bad forever. They won one.
It can't hurt
That's
you.
all I wanted.
It can't hurt.
I don't
They can't
care.
hurt you anymore.
I don't care. As we know, when June happens and baseball's over for me, I go watch Canadian football. I don't care about your Braves. For those Braves fans, I don't hate you. I don't care. But yes, I don't know if anybody checked it. And then was it Castellanos that made the catch in the?
I believe so, yes.
To seal it up there. Yeah, tough for Fried because, pitching's been the Braves thing for like 30 years now. It's been pitching. That's how they do it. To get shelled like that, particularly the only time he's been shelled this year, but to own up on it, right? I mean, I think that's the one thing you like about pros and you like about your athletes. He didn't go in there with a big excuse one way or another, just very matter-of-factly. Here it was. They were swinging. I wasn't good there. He ate it and moved on. Lot of respect to that.
No, I do respect that. Now, what do you do different next time you come out?
Miss bats.
That'd be nice.
Or at least don't let them barrel them up if you don't miss them. It was some shots in that game. I mean, I had it kind of on the second screen over there. I got on watching some football. I did have it on for a minute, and it was already Phillies were up pretty good by the time I turned it on, so I didn't see the early part.
Here's one. This one's a written quote. Quote, looking for a new weekend hobby, something not Southeastern based, if anyone has any ideas. Something low drama and relaxing, preferably. End quote. From 3-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and current team owner Tony Stewart, whose team was just fined $200,000 for manipulating the end result of a race at the Charlotte Roval on Sunday. Cole Custer was deemed to have been an illegal pick for Chase Briscoe to gain positions, which allowed Briscoe to cement himself in the round of 8 of the NASCAR playoffs. So this is on the heels of Stewart-Haas Racing getting the number 4 car banhammered by NASCAR R&D, where crew chief Rodney Childers was fined $100,000 and suspended 4 races after Kevin Harvick had been very outspoken against NASCAR. A lot of people thought that was suspicious.
So what you're saying is team racing in NASCAR, no one saw this coming. They would, try to help a guy who was in better standings finish in a higher spot to help them get in the playoffs. Like this is a news flash to NASCAR.
So the total in the last 2 weeks, Stewart Haas Racing has been fined $300,000 for 2 different team violations.
That seems like a lot. Not for them, I guess, but
considering the margins right now on some of these NASCAR teams, I think Tony is serious about potentially wanting to get out of Cup.
Tony's had a rough go of it last 5-6 years.
Yeah, he started his own series. They kind of hoodooed him on the whole Eldora thing. Man, that would be catastrophic for Ford, let alone for NASCAR, if Tony Stewart's like, deuces. Because Gene Haas is not going to keep that team around. He's too busy trying to keep his F1 team afloat. Team orders, by the way, are common and expected in Formula One.
I do not speak a lot of Formula One. I know there's a lot of movies out there about it.
There are a lot of movies out there.
I remember Al Unser Jr. was good. Is he still around?
That was IndyCar. But yes, he was very good. There are multiple cars of his in the IndyCar Museum at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's do some hot mic action, shall we? Hot mic.
Tampa will have a chance to tie on the power play with Ryan Carpenter going to the box. They took the lead on their own power play. Panarin, Zibanejad, the one-time Rocket. It's 2-1 New York. Yankee highlight, way back and go. Oh, Sean.
That's where it cuts to commercial. That is Sean McDonough and Ray Ferraro. Sean McDonough caught on a hot mic giving play-by-play of Anthony Rizzo's home run in the Yankees' win over Cleveland last night when they thought they were clear to commercial.
Sean does love baseball.
And he apparently loves hot mics. This is the second time it's happened to him this year.
Well, the first one was somebody was rolling on the B-roll. They were actually at break, but somebody, I think, hoodooed him and Todd Blackledge because
probably
that one was a bit more. I know Tennessee fans don't hear it, but there's a lot of chatter when you go. And when you're a broadcaster and you don't have a dog in the fight, you want solid games and to defend Sean there a little bit.
Absolutely.
If you hear it in a vacuum, yes, you should be upset, and I get that. But they're not pulling. They weren't pulling for Tennessee to lose. They wanted the ending to be better because they were in an overtime game.
Blackledge flat out said that Pitt was pedestrian on offense.
Again, that's one of those things like where you're clear, and they were at a break. That was one of those where somebody behind the scenes hoodooed them and should be fired and
and probably yelled at. I don't know if fired, but just put the fear of the good Lord into him. The good Lord being the Disney corporate overlords in this case. At
some point, depending on how that went, and that one was tame, but that could cost somebody a livelihood.
It could.
With you trying to prove whatever it is you were trying to do.
Sean McDonough, very clearly, the mic is always hot.
I'm okay with that.
Didn't do anything outlandish. That one was honestly kind of funny and endearing because we were also flipping back and forth between that game and the Rangers Lightning last night.
I mean, again, at some point during the ETSU Robert Morris game, I gave live updates of I don't remember what Southern Conference game it was, but I was giving, I think maybe it was Furman Sanford. I was just giving more live updates on that than I was the game I was actually supposed to be calling. So I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I love a live look in with something that had to do with what you're supposed to be doing for a job.
No doubt. Here's another one, another written one. Quote, "It's a Rubik's Cube times 2, end quote, from ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips on the logistics of expanding postseasons for Olympic sports. Said that expanding those tournaments is doable and would not water down the events in the event they expanded the tournament fields, but it is very complex."
Yes, I would assume the extra money's involved to put that on, even for the teams to go, like because the NCAA doesn't want to kick in money of those sports. I mean, that would make sense. Then we know they don't like to make sense. So basketball, football,
they like to make dollars.
They do, and basketball, football, baseball, those in-year tournament things, those produce dollars. Some of the other sports don't. So I think that's going to be the biggest issue. Sounds great, but is the conference footing some of that bill? Is it just on the individual teams?
Well, here's the other thing: is there is a general belief and understanding that the NCAA is about to take the women's basketball championship to market as a standalone property. Previously, it has sold all of its men's basketball championships, including the FCS playoffs, to ESPN as a package deal for a lump sum amount of money. If you do what you're thinking about doing with women's hoops, with all of your tournaments, and let some of them float, like baseball, softball, and let them see what the market fetches, then you could potentially expand those fields based on the amount of revenue they're able to bring in, up to 25% of all Division I schools sponsoring those sports.
Yeah, I'd have to see the number. I know softball has had a boom the last couple of years in their numbers. It's
been huge. Volleyball has just exploded as well. Yeah, they're way ahead of where they were 10 years ago. It's just night and day.
You know, and maybe they strategically roll that out with, let's start women's basketball, let's start baseball, softball. Maybe do it that way, because I still think it's a hard sell on lacrosse. You know, soccer's still not where
with
it needs
lacrosse,
to be.
you're almost at 25% anyway, so I don't really know that you need to expand it. Same with hockey. You don't really need to expand the hockey tournament.
But I'm just thinking more of like taking it to market. The first part of that equation, taking it to market. I just, you know, and the Frozen Four does have its niche audience that I think do care and would, you know, that possibly just because it's one of the big four sports in general. But I think they could certainly take women's basketball, see what you could get. Baseball, softball, I think could probably get something. I mean, one time CBS used to have the baseball. So there's some stuff there I think that could come into play. But overall, I think they probably still need to have a package together. And then slow roll that out. But I'm not.
There will need to be some sports that are still lumped together for sure. But I think there are more opportunities to piece out some of the more attractive championships.
Yeah, I think you could get a pretty dollar for women's basketball, baseball, and even softball. I think you could get those. And after that, I think you could probably go hockey and then volleyball in that order. And I think you could get something other than just the generic, here it is.
Also, it's not necessarily as expensive to expand, say, the wrestling tournament or the track and field tournament as it would be baseball, softball, hockey tournament.
More sites,
the FCS playoffs would be very cost intensive to expand. Track might not be. So you might be able to do that without necessarily a ton of overhead. You just have to account for.
You just have more teams going
hotels.
to a regional. Is all that is.
Yeah,
or
that's
golf,
all it is.
or
that's
tennis, or whatever. Yeah,
and that's super easy. All right, one more here on Say What.
Why do you think the teams in the division are farther ahead at this point?
Quarterback. The truth is that this is a quarterback-driven league. And if you look at the teams that have been able to sustain success, they've been able to build it around a specific quarterback.
Chose the quarterback here, though, so do you have any regrets about that, or how do you?
No, I got no regrets about their quarterback. I think our quarterback has done some good things. There's been a couple of games that he struggled, and you would say, okay, look at his numbers he's had throughout the year. There was a time he was, very solid, and then, we had the unfortunate Philadelphia game, and he struggled a little bit in the Dallas game, but the way he performed yesterday, it just shows you what he's capable of. And, we chose him because we believe in him. We chose him because we looked at what we felt were things that pointed towards him.
That is Ron Rivera, the head coach of the Washington Commanders, asked why he thinks other NFC East teams are ahead of them in rebuild, and he says, quarterback. And then he starts to backpedal.
Well, I mean, he's got a new. I mean, in fairness, a couple of those guys. A couple of those guys have been in the same job for at least a little longer than Wentz, right?
They have, for sure.
Hurts has been in there. It's the second year. Jones is in his second year. Dallas always seems to have another guy besides Dax in there at all times. But Dallas's defense is by far the best in the NFC East. So, and they didn't have much turnover in Dallas. I mean, still the key players. So I think new quarterback. What's this, year 2 for Rivera? Or year 3?
This is year. I think it's year 3.
Yeah, I think it is too. Year 3, but first we went, so got to get going. But the truth is, he didn't say anything earth-shattering.
No.
The quarterback is what is the biggest thing in the NFL.
Yes, and relative to Dak and Hurts, the Commanders are probably a little bit behind them with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I didn't have a huge. I get why he needed to backtrack. I get why
he definitely backtracked.
Why they asked
the
question. But he answered it, which I always enjoyed about old Riverboat Ron, was he answered it honestly. He gave, you asked a question, he gave an honest answer, and
I like the follow-up question. You chose your quarterback, so does that something? Do you regret that decision? He said, no, not at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think that's a fair question and answer.
And I think he made a fair critique of he's had games where we weren't like, and we've had games where, hey, look at that, it's what we could be. So to me, that just says they've not played that many games together. They're trying to get it, figured out. And I kind of enjoyed Ron there. I know he had to come out and apologize to Carson Wentz, which I didn't think he had to, unless Carson Wentz, and maybe him more than me, needed an apology.
Oh, buddy.
I wouldn't have did. I would have just gone behind closed doors and say, look, man, I mean, what do you think the difference is in the last several teams that won a Super Bowl? Quarterback. Let's go win one together. That's what I would say.
And again, that's the show. Tomorrow on the show, lots of Mercer preview, SoCon preview, lots of stuff going on. Pick six as well. Pick six as well.
And bold predictions.
On the Jay and Keith Show.
All right. We'll be back with you. A big thanks, Matt Brown. Appreciate him stopping by.
Matt's great. Always good to have him on.
All right, next week we're going to try to talk to some players. How about that? Something new. We always add new stuff.
Let's do it.
Jay and Keith tomorrow. Buccaneers Network. Bye!